This is the Kitsap Sun's editorial board. We're talking to a candidate for Kitsap County Commissioner District 2, Roger Gay. Roger's also a former member of this board a couple years ago, so we're aware of that connection to us. Roger, why don't you take 2 minutes to introduce yourself and kind of give us just a brief glimpse at why you decided to do this, and then we'll ask some questions.
All right. Well, name's Roger Gay, running for Kitsap County Commissioner District 2 as an independent. Why am I doing this? I get asked that quite a few times. Basically, I'm tired of not getting questions answered that I have. I go to a lot of meetings, have over the last couple of years, Kitsap Regional Coordinating Council, Kitsap Transit, Port of Bremerton, County Commissioner meetings, and there's a lot of questions I have, and I don't see our commissioners asking these questions. And I think it's a lot of the same questions taxpayers have. Is the money you're spending, is it doing good? Are we getting a benefit from it? And explanations of why things are happening the way they are. And so I looked at it over the last year, decided earlier this year that I need to get another voice in there. I want to be a voice for the people. I'm not representing the Democratic, Republican, Libertarian, whatever party. I'm an independent. I'm not a politician by any stretch of the imagination. And I'm doing this because I think it's time to have another voice, another point of view, another set of experiences in the commissioner's office.
Explain this part of your slogan to me, because you just said it, and it's on your website, and you use the phrase, "What's in it for the taxpayers?" Explain that and answer this. First, I want to know, is that an anti-tax opinion, or is it something different than that, and how do you make that judgment?
I think part of it, well, it's not anti-tax. I mean, we have a lot of needs in the county. The state has needs, the federal government has needs, it has to get paid for in some way. And the only way the legislature has allowed us to do things is via various sundry taxes and fees. So there's going to be a need for those no matter what. I don't see us ever getting to the point where we don't have those. But we have to make sure we're getting a bang for the buck. Is what we're putting out worth the amount of money that we're putting out for it? And part of that is not just listening to verbiage saying, oh yes, we saw 13 people, so that $32,000 you gave our organization is worthwhile. Going and talking to the people that are working and asking the questions, what's getting done, how's it getting done? Have some actual facts come out about how effective that money is. And I think a lot of that is asking the right questions of the right people in the county and in the organizations that we give funding to, whether it be public works, whether it be for mental health care, whether it be for the sheriff's department. You have to ask the right questions to the people doing the work. Hey, that money you're getting, that project you're working on, is it doing good? Is it making us a difference? Or is it just fluff, smoke and mirrors?
How do you do that without, I think it's a sentiment anyone would agree with for any elected official, right? I want you to be my representative and do that. County government, especially when we only have 3 commissioners, there's got to be a risk of what could be seen as micromanaging. If what you're saying, I'm going to go ask all of these questions, how are you going to balance that with doing the commissioner's job, like you're explaining it, but also making sure people still do their jobs and are responsive?
Part of that is just like in the military, retired senior chief. Wasn't our job to necessarily micromanage, but the job was to communicate with everybody from the lowest enlisted person up to the commanding officer of the ship. We were sort of the middle point. We had to communicate both ways. And part of that is communicating with the public. What are their needs? What are their questions? Another part of that is communicating with the staff, not just the high level staff. I see too many times the commissioner's job come up with policy. The commissioner comes up with a policy, the policy staff comes up with the rules and the regulations. Well, part of that as a commissioner is, are those rules and regulations making sense to the people that have to follow those rules and regulations, to the people that have to enforce those rules and regulations? Can they do it? And the only way you're really going to get the answer is you talk to them. Now that may be in group meetings, it may be in what they call lean kaizans, where you get together as a group and you talk about a process or a job. But I think that communications, that interaction, it's to a point, if you carry it too far, yes, it might be considered micromanagement. But you have to have some of it, because otherwise all you're listening to is whatever's fed to you. And I disagree with just being fed information and not knowing the facts.
Or, as you've pointed out you've written letters to the editor about this, and I know this from your own experience, that people don't show up for meetings. And you have done that over the years. I know that you attend a lot of council commissions, board commissions, all of that sort of thing. Do you think some of that information that you would make judgments on, is it available, but folks just don't know how to access it or don't know how to see it? Or do you think the county needs to really start from scratch and say, how do we evaluate
I think the county needs to learn to better communicate. Give you an example over the comp plan over the last 18 months. They started working on a comp plan change 18 months ago. So you got staff working on the comp plan, working with the commissioners to come up with the high-level policies. And then from that, you break it down into 3 choices. That got broke down into 1 choice. Then they had to build rules and regulations based on the comp plan. And it affected people's zoning, it affected their property and other things. Well, I was listening to a lot of the testimony in the comp plan, and there are people that here's a process that's been going on for 18 months. They were notified there was going to be a change in their zoning in one form or another 3 weeks ago or 4 weeks ago. You're not communicating with your public. If all you do is you send them a postcard in the mail a year before a process even becomes close to being to fruition, and that's the extent of your communications. I think there needs to be more one-on-one. Knock on the door. Hi, we're from the county. Here's what we think is going to happen. Here's things that are going on. And I think that communications isn't there. Kitsap Regional Coordinating Council, they had a change of management. They went to Triangle Associates not too long ago and redid their website. So I go on the website, I look for the agendas, and I'm sitting, you gotta click here, and okay, click over here, okay, wipe over here. So I talked to the people that were there, a young lady named Sophie, and I said, hey, this is ridiculous. Why don't you have something where if I come up to your website and I'm interested in the meeting, the agendas, I can get to it. She came back to me about a month and a half later. She says, what do you think? And she just sent me the link to their website. Big green button in the middle of their website, agendas and meeting information. 1 click, you're taken right there. That's communicating with the public better. And I think we as a county and as the government in general need to do that better. The information's there. If you look for some of the things for the comp plan, the DCD and stuff, I mean, if you're not highly technically competent at times, you get lost. And we need to make it easier for people to get that information.
Tell me a piece of your own personal background that I think relates to this. We know that you attend a lot of meetings. Where else are you connected in this community? How else are you hearing? You say it's a big deal to knock on people's door or be the voice of the people, stuff like that. What else do you do that puts you in a position to be someone who's listening?
Basically, I'm available. I mean, I talk to people. I mean, my campaign manager and wife, Betty, basically, I will stop people in the middle of a grocery store and talk to them if they have questions. Just listening being able to listen to what people have to say. And I think at any point, you, as a county commissioner, as somebody working with the government, you have to be able to listen to what the people are saying. And can you solve every problem they have? I mean, I got a list today. I was door knocking today, and I got a list of about 4 different things I got from a couple of people that had issues with either city or county problems or government in general. Am I going to be able to solve them? Probably not. But I'm there to listen at least. At least I can listen to them and understand what's going on. And then sometimes when you start listening, it's like I've got a lean background, a lean Six Sigma. And part of that is getting people at a table from different parts of a department or a process and getting them to talk to each other. And sometimes being that intermediary, trying to get the people to sit down at the table with a differing point of views, the things that you can accomplish from that are remarkable. You get some cross-information, cross-filtering, some explanations that one person has an idea of and knew about, but the other person had no clue. And all of a sudden they're sitting down at a table talking about it. I think we need to do more of that. Communications, not only within the county, but with the constituents, with the taxpayers.
Have you seen any of that going on in the county that you could point to and say, that's a way to do it?
There's things that they're doing. They've got a couple of different groups within the county that they've taken different people from the different departments and put them in as an IRT, forget the exact wording they were using, but basically it's sort of a combined group that they sit down and hassle out certain issues and problems that they've got in front of them. And I think that's a really good stepping stone to what needs to get done. They have the county, proud in regards to the county, in regards to the number of volunteers they have. You look at the number of thousands of hours that the volunteers that work, help the county out every year are there, and being able to communicate with those people and integrate them to not only, use the time that they have, but understand what's going on all over the county itself. How this group on trails integrates with this group on water trails down in South Kitsap. And the county's doing a better job of it. They're increasing that, but I think part of that is they need to get more in the county itself and do it. A lot more communications amongst themselves, and then a lot more communications with the taxpayers. And I think one-on-one, as much as possible, is a lot better than just sending out a postcard. I mean, it's a simple thing like the address changes. How many of you had, got a notice about a potential address change? Addresses are changing in all 3 areas of Kitsap County because of the enhanced 911. And I talked to them on a couple of things, trying to be able to get the information on the website, being able to ask, hey, am I involved in it? Because you get told that your address may change sometime in the next 2 to 3 years. So if you try to get a loan, you're wanting to buy a house, you're wanting to do things, all that paperwork might be inane because now your address is going to change. So I talked to the people running that particular program in the county, and they made more information available on the website. Allowed people to go into it, type in, hey, here's my address, am I going to get involved? And you get an answer back, no, you're not. Oh, you might be. We're in that area, and there are some issues, so we're going to give you a notice in 6 months that you're fully involved in it. Again, communicating with the public, making it easier for the public to use what you have to gain information they need.
One of the things, I asked this question partly because you're running as an independent, but one of the communication keys is, of course, working with the 2 other commissioners, because not that you need to walk in lockstep or be all buddies, but you need to get along and be able to work with these 2. Do you have any relationship at all with the other 2? Not your opponent, of course, but if you were in this seat, what's your opinion of Ed Wolf and Rob Gelder? Do you have
I've attended a lot of meetings with them over the last year or so, run into them in a lot of Kitsap Transit, Kitsap Regional Coordinating meetings and stuff. Good working relationship with all 3 commissioners right now. I mean, I had questions, I could go to any one of them and ask questions, I could get answers. Same thing with a lot of the staff, the heads of the different departments and stuff. I talk to them on a regular basis when I'm at meetings and things, and I think the communication lines are there. I have a lot of respect for Ed and his background and experience, and Rob, the experience that he brings to the commissioner's office.
Go ahead.
So I'm just curious, if you sounds like you have good communication with the commissioners, they answer your questions. What are some of and so the issue is just communication, but I'm not real clear about, are there decisions that have been made that you don't agree with, or what?
Well, there's decisions they make that I don't agree with. There's directions they go that because of the information they have, they go that direction, and I'm not necessarily in agreement because there's other questions I think need to be asked that they're not getting. They're limited to what they have.
Can you give an example of what you're talking about?
I could use passenger-only ferry. I disagree with their points on the passenger-only ferry system and how to support that. They voted for, the passenger-only ferry, to put it for the vote to the people and everything. And they've asked a few questions on it, but I've gone to a number of meetings like Mr. Gelder and Ed Wolf and Commissioner Garrido both would go and ask questions at the transit board meeting and not necessarily get the answers, and come back a month later and still not have answers. And I'm sorry, if I'm in that position and if I ask a question, I'm going to get my answers. I'm not going to wait a month. I'm not going to be ignored. I want the answers. I want that information. And I don't think at times that there are as assertive or forthcoming and trying to get the information that they want, that they need to make decisions. And so I get, like I said, I'm not a politician. I'm a retired senior chief in the Navy. I'm going to bring some of that to the office.
I'll kind of follow up with what Martha's trying to get at, because I think so far we've talked about this kind of a broad, how you approach a job. But I want to ask just a couple of specifics, and then I'd like to know your opinion on priorities.
Sure.
And I'll point out a few that this board has talked about and had guests in, and one of them is the mental health tax and what the county is doing with, right, with that money right now, the triage center getting in the works, all the rest of that. I'd like, what is your opinion of that process, how the funding priorities were come up with? Do you agree with that? Is there something more the county needs to get involved in?
And may I just
Sure,
add to
jump
that,
in.
your question? You mentioned in the beginning that you are interested in measuring performance and making sure that how would you measure the performance of the triage center that will soon be operating? How would you measure whether or not you're getting their money's worth?
Well, part of the caveat for the organizations that are requesting the money is they have to come up with metrics and measurements to show the board, the commissioners, and the 1/10% board that proposed it, what it is that they're doing and how they're doing it. My thing is, like I said, I've got a lean background on it. I know it is very hard for an organization or a group of people to come up with metrics to show that you actually showed an improvement. Unless you've got apples and now you've got 10 apples, it's hard to show verbiage that, well, yes, we saw 15 people and they're much better now. Part of that, I think, is having staff, having commissioners, having the organizations, and talk to the people that are getting the services. I know for a fact, and some things that I've heard over the last couple of years, is this money, there was a money and funding put out to have an organization help out on, I think it had to do with medical issues and drug issues at different medical facilities. Well, what the whole thing consisted of is a half-page survey added on to the survey when you first check in. That's the whole thing survey. It just add another half a dozen questions onto an already list of questions that you get asked when you initially get admitted into the system. And is that doing any good? Is that $30,000, $40,000, whatever it was? Is that really getting a bang for the buck? Is it helping anybody? So part of that is to go see. I want to go to the organizations and see walk through the system. How is it working? Talk to the people that use the system. Is it working? Are there things there that you think needed to get changed that would help even better? That's the ones, whether it's at the 0.1% level at the Kitsap Mental Health Facility, whether it's at the Parks Department or Public Works, at the people doing the work, they're the ones who are going to have the answers. Is it working? Is the funding we're giving you worthwhile? And I think as a county commissioner, as a county, we need to ask those questions of the people at that level. I can go ask the department head something, and I can get a really good answer for it. But to find out how it's really working, I have to go talk to the people with the shovels in the dirt. And I think we need more of that.
What is a lean? You keep referring to, you're a lean?
Lean or Lean Six Sigma it started years ago as a Toyota process system to make a process more efficient, be it building something, doing something like that. It's basically process efficiency. A lot of where the lean came from is how changes happen is the people working the job are the ones that you need to talk to fix what it is. And it can be something as simple as workflow. I'm doing a job, I'm making something, I hand it off over here, I walk over here and hand it off, and it makes a difference if that person, they take the machine, unbolt it, move it, drop it over here, and then start to work again, and it's less of a handoff, it's less of a walkabout. So it's looking at things and making things more efficient, making things more effective.
Is it an acronym or just that's the title of it, lean?
It does stand for something. I don't remember the exact terminology.
Six Sigma is the title of the program.
It's kind of a training program.
Yeah.
That I think
Lean is actually a Toyota. The Six Sigma, what Six Sigma deals with is how complete something is. Like 99% is really good, 95% is really good. Lean Six Sigma takes it out to where literally, how many inspections does your cell phone get? When they build a cell phone, right? How many inspections does it get? None. They build them, they send them off. There's such a low failure rate that what they do, it's easier and cheaper for them. Instead of having a whole quality assurance and inspection department, they just, if it breaks, they just give you a replacement. So that's the Six Sigma part, having something so efficient that it's easier just to replace it than it is trying to have a whole inspection and quality assurance team.
You kind of told us about the more of the measurement, but as a priority with the county, you know, electing to do the tax and spending money on the mental health, I guess just your opinion on first its appropriateness and as a priority, where is that for you?
I think it's a good, I've been to some of the meetings, God, it's been a year and a half, almost 2 years ago when we first started putting this together. Went through some of the discussions on the first group of organizations to get the funding. I was involved in a little bit in the second group, going to the meetings and looking online of the information I had. I think it's a really good idea. I think they were smart to take the system. Originally it was for a year. They just jacked it up to 18 months, especially in a new program. Here you go, I give you a check for $50,000. It's going to take you time to get started on what it is you're going to do. So they're able to take it to 18 months to give you time to get started before they come back and start asking for the metrics. What did you do? How did you do it? How effective was it? What we funded for your organization, how did that affect the overall mental health or drug dependency in Kitsap County? So what they're doing, I think, is really good. I fully support the program, but my question on it is I want to make sure that the metrics and what we use to say that it works and it is effective are solid and are grounded in fact and science and not smoke and mirrors.
A related one, again, something our board has had guests in on, a guest from the county, the Human Services Division has come and talked to us about homelessness, particularly the effort the county is making towards a net zero on veterans homelessness. And so, Mike, I'm curious your opinion of that as a priority and the county's action so far, and any other ideas you think they should be.
I like the fact that the county and a number of organizations over the last few years have got away from having zero homelessness. To say there won't be any, I mean, I'm sorry, they're going to have it. I think
Functional zero.
the functional zero is, to that, having somebody, you're going to have somebody homeless. The idea is, number one, try to prevent them from being homeless, if at all possible. Be due to rent raises, increases, due to whatever it happens to be, chemical, mental health dependencies, issues. And the other part is once they get into the system as homeless, have them there as short a time as possible and get them back, into the system. The county, I think, is working more and more towards that. They're working with some local organizations. They passed that emergency ordinance recently on having homeless shelters within, private property and nonprofit properties. We're going in the right direction, but there still needs to be a lot more involvement of not just the county, but nonprofits, other organizations, service organizations, and the citizens themselves. It's not an issue that's just for one particular organization to solve. This is something, the homeless issue, the drug dependency issues in the county are something that we all are going to have to work together on. And again, part of that is the county communicating those issues to the residents and getting their support via some of the service organizations.
How have you spent time trying to get more in touch with those issues, and if so, how so?
Well, I attend a lot of the meetings that the county goes. I'm signed up. You guys got that little thing coming up in next Thursday, I think it is. I'm going, being attending that. I've talked to a number of different people. I have a tendency maybe to hang out sometimes in places that not necessarily would you find some commissioners at, and I talk to homeless people. I know people that live in the area, in the Port Orchard area and stuff, and they see the people I've talked to, they're appreciative of a lot of the issues, but they see things a lot as, well, what's the latest flavor on what can help somebody that's homeless, and then a week, a month goes by, now it's something different. And I think the county, again, it's not just a one organization problem. The county's not going to fix it. The county and every 401, 301k in the county, they're going to have to work together. And a lot of that is communicating. What are the needs? What things do we need to do to make it easier for people to transition from being homeless to being productive?
So you talk about, I'm trying to get a sense of what you see as the big picture here. talking about transportation, did you wanna say anything about that? I mean, you mentioned the ferries that.
Well, yeah, I mean, transportation in the county, it's an issue. We've dug ourselves a hole for 30 years. I mean, we've limited how to get in and out of the county. Right now, one of the big blocks, Gorst, that's been a problem since, I mean, I was here in the 70s and Gorst was an issue. It hasn't really changed a whole lot. It's just gotten worse over the years. So part of it is this county itself needs to really look at what is going to help move people in the county. How can we connect with the state highways, work with the state to make sure if they get on the highways they can leave. Like right now, where I live out in South Kitsap, trying to get through Sedgwick and Sydney in that area right now, down Sedgwick and down Sydney across the freeway is up 2 o'clock in the afternoon and you're backed up. So we have to work better with the state, with the county, with the cities to identify the problem areas. I mean, we're doing another Highway 16 survey, another states getting into it and go look at Highway 16 and the issues there. We've got another group putting together another Gorst issue thing. I mean, we've gone through these things so many times. We need to start really looking, what can we do to fix the problem? Does that mean another 3 lanes through Gorst? Then start planning for it now. Don't keep doing another survey. We need the Belfair bypass. Now, if the Belfair bypass gets funded and goes through, how that's going to affect Highway 3, we need to start looking at that right away. Where that connector's coming in at Lake Flora, and how's that going to affect the traffic patterns in the county, and which way the traffic. We don't start looking at that now, 20 years from now, traffic's not going to change. We're still going to be in the same issues we have right now and the same problems.
I'll ask the question in a slightly different way, because driving the traffic problems is the growth problems.
Yep.
Where our businesses are, where our residences are kind of growing, and especially in South Kitsap. This is part of your website is you've watched some of this at your front door and what's happening. What's your opinion of kind of how the comp plan is materialized with setting aside and dictating to an extent where that's going to be in South Kitsap? Do you think it's on the right track? And maybe explain a little bit what your vision of Kitsap County is. As the growth occurs, what are we going to look like? And what would you like to see that if you
Well,
win this?
if you look at what the comp plan says, is they want growth, something like 70 or 80% of the growth and jobs to be within the cities, in the urban areas. And then you look at what the UGAs are, the urban growth areas for the cities, and how that expands. Well, the urban growth areas, the UGAs now are different than what they were when they first did the comp plan for the GMA thing, because the cities decided they wanted to go a different direction. I think the idea of building is good, and I think we need to keep the development in the urban areas. I think the cities need to look more and more at going up by spreading further out. Kitsap, in a lot of people's minds, is still pretty rural. I mean, you can go a half mile out of a city, within a city limit, and you still got a fairly rural area. We still have a lot of farms and agriculture and farming that goes on. We need to be able to preserve that. We don't want to become downtown Seattle or downtown Bellevue by any stretch of the imagination. So the GMA, the comp plan, is helping limit that in some areas, but I think that we as citizens need to really look at what we're supporting for that growth. Can we support it with better transportation? Like right now, transportation in the county for public transportation, excuse the expression, but it really sucks. If you're a commuter, you got a pretty good deal. You can get around for a job here and there, unless your job happens to fall in the middle of the afternoon and going into the evening, especially on a weekend, Saturday or Sunday. We need better public transportation. You want people to live in the rural areas, you want them to have jobs and homes within the urban areas. You have to have that transportation corridor to be able to let the people move back and forth. Right now, where's the most of the population live? In Kitsap County, 56,000 people? Was it 70% of them live in the urban areas, outside city limits? So outside city limits, Bremerton, for as big as it is, has only got 37,000 people, something like that in it. So when you start looking at the numbers, it's like, well, wait a minute, we're trying to move growth into the cities, but yet 3/4 of your population don't live in the cities. So we need to concentrate. If we're going to bring them in, you're going to bring the jobs in, you need to concentrate in the areas you have, build up, quit spreading out further on the UGAs.
But isn't that figure you just gave drastically skewed by Silverdale not being a city?
Yeah, Silverdale, we'll
That's-
throw numbers into it if and when Silverdale comes into it, but then look at the Silverdale UGA and the population it controls. It still puts a good majority of the people outside unincorporated.
Yeah.
So, we're trying to shift the population, but yet the GMA sort of assumes that this is why where we're gonna put the denser population is in the urban areas within the city limits. So does that mean that we force everybody? Okay, yeah, all you people that live outside the city limits are gonna have to move. No, we're gonna build for the future. We're gonna build for the people coming in to live and work within the city limits. But we still have to understand that right now, the majority of our population is outside the city limits. And we have to be able to transport them to work and jobs, within the city limits and in some cases outside the county. And I don't see where we're really looking at that far enough ahead that the problems and issues we have now, we're gonna have 5 years from now, we're gonna have 10 years from now, it's just gonna get worse.
The size of the council, so, and if you guys talked about this before I got here, I apologize. With the workload on the council and the amount of boards you guys have to be on, or all those kinds of things, do you have a sense of the right sizing of the council? Is it at a good size? Is it undersized? Is it oversized? I just want to get a sense of maybe where you feel about that.
I think at this point with the population we have, it's about right for, 3 commissioners for roughly 250,000 people. I think if the growth goes into the system, the way they're looking at into the future, and if you project out to 2040, 2060 timeframe, with the increase in the population of the county, but then you also have to balance that again with like Silverdale, potentially turning into a city, some of the other, Kingston, some of these other areas, potential, smaller cities into the future. If you still keep a majority in the urban area like it is, or in the rural area like it is right now, I could see potentially going to 5 commissioners at some point. But I think for the time being, the way we're set up works well. I know the commissioners have a tendency to like to be able to, if there's 5 commissioners, 2 of them to sit down and talk over things. Now the only time they can do it is if it's a public meeting. Well, I guarantee you, they go to a morning brief and an afternoon brief and a Wednesday morning work study session. And there's 3 commissioners sitting at a table, and it's an official open public meeting. I'm usually the only one there, besides staff. So they have more than enough time right now to have one-on-one conversations with each other during open public meeting time frame. So I don't see it a big issue right now. Now, again, future, a much greater population, yeah.
So we understand that each commissioner sits on or chairs 20 plus
There's
committees
quite a
and
few boards and committees.
And
yeah.
boards and such. You're prepared to handle that load, that
Oh, yeah.
workload?
I'm retired, I don't have a job, other commitments. My boss over there, she's my honey-do list person, and I go to a lot of them now as it is. I also know the commissioners, a lot they don't attend, they have staff attend a lot of them and get information. You've got the general meetings and you got the executive board meetings for a lot of the different organizations. So a lot of times staff will go to the general meetings and get a lot of information, feed that to the commissioner, and then the commissioner will go to the executive board meeting where they're part of. So there are a lot of meetings that they go to. Tuesday marathons are always fun. That's when they start out in the morning with Kitsap Transit, Kitsap Regional Coordinating Council, the Department of Emergency Management, 911, housing and health all in one day. And it takes them from about 8 o'clock in the morning until about 5 o'clock that night. All the different boards, and that's just that one day.
I just wonder how you would do all this communication you're talking about on one-on-one. When you go in all these meetings and you have a lot of responsibilities with them,
It's-
and then you're gonna be talking to not only your constituents, people who elect you, but also all the workers, the worker bees.
Yep.
The way you
It's not gonna be an easy job, but I think it needs to get done. And I see what the commissioners do. I mean, it's not an 8 to 5 job by any stretch of the imagination. I'm not gonna punch a clock in at 8 and punch a clock out at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. That's not what the job's about. And I think, I've got a commitment for the 4 years that's what I'm doing, and And I'll enjoy it. I enjoy being challenged. I enjoy communicating and talking to people and seeing things progress and getting things done.
Let's get us specific. And a lot of it we talked about is kind of policy, and I can tell that's what you're into. You like the figuring out the process and doing it better and all the rest of those things. But is there an issue that really grabs your passion too? Is there something that you'd say 4 years I'd love to say I had my fingerprints on this problem or this project or something like that?
There's something that's bugged me for a long time is one aspect is parks, the parks department. The county can go out and find millions of dollars to go buy property. Because of Olympia and how Olympia words the rules and regulations, there are different types of funds you get money for, you can go buy property. $1 million here, $500,000 there. I was on the Parks Board for over 10 years as a representative from South Kitsap, quite a few, 20-some years ago. Overjoyed to be able to go buy parks for the future. But the problem being is there was no money to operate, maintain, or develop the park systems. We have thousands and thousands of acres of property. The rules and regulations Olympia pulls out limits what we can use to fund improvements. And I think we really need to work with Olympia to get this changed to where if we go buy 1,000 acres, we have a funding source to improve and help maintain that. Because otherwise, you go get 1,000 acres of property, you dump it on Parks Department, yeah, in your budget, which is usually the first budget to get cut during a recession, you gotta go clean and fix these areas and maintain them. And it's hard, because I talked to Mr. Dinwiddie, head of the Parks Department, a couple of months ago. And there's a chunk of property out by where I live at, Wicks Lake. When I was on the Parks Board, the county owned 10 acres around that. Little 10 acres around Wicks Lake area. And then over a period of time, they ended up buying more. They ended up getting 100 acres. So they owned about 100 acres surrounding the Wicks Lake area. So then I'm looking through the county websites and looking at different things over time, and I'm like, wow, they got 157 acres over there. So I talked to Jim one day. We were sitting there waiting for a meeting to start, and we're sitting out in front of the admin building. And I go, yeah, it's 157. He goes, oh, we have 100 acres. And I think you got more than that. So he went back and looked and found out, yeah, they'd bought more land. They've had so many purchases of little chunks of land here and there that they didn't really have a good handle on what it was they had. If you don't have a handle on it, how can you operate it? How can you maintain it? How can you improve it for the public to use? If you're not going to use it for the public use, maybe we ought to start looking at getting rid of some of it.
You know,
And
that was-
consolidating our efforts and doing better with what we have.
That was an interesting article in today's paper about almost exactly this point. I don't know if you saw that.
No.
About, well, it's an issue of this, a place to launch a boat. And it turns out the county thought they owned it, but they didn't.
The
So I'm like, do you
harbor
know?
estuary.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I go to a lot of the meetings and I hear a lot of weird things, and some of the stuff I've heard over the last year, the county, the cities, really when it comes to who owns what properties, who owns what where, they don't really have that good of a handle on it. There's a lot of issues when they start delving into the titles and the signatures on a lot of the paperwork. There's issues there, and that's something that really has to we need to really take a good look at some point, because if you don't know what it is you own and what you have access to, how can you set up a plan to improve it for the public use? Be it water access, be it a public park. You gotta know what you have before you really start improving it. And I think having that in hand and knowing what we have, being able to go to Olympia, to our legislators, and saying, hey, we've got this property, you sort of limit the funds that we have to purchase but not to operate and maintain. We need to work with this better. We need to be able to have a plan, buy the property, and set up a fund so we have operations and maintenance on that chunk of property. I mean, we've got thousands of acres right now that it just sits there, and it's not being taken care of, not being managed, and if you let it grow wild, I mean, you're getting yourself into more issues later on. It's going to be more expensive.
Well, thanks for the time here. Leave us with the last thought on what separates you. What is different for a voter if they choose Roger Gaines for this summer and potentially?
Basically, I mean, first of all, I'm not the politician. You know, I am not a politician by any stretch of the imagination. I'm a taxpayer that's lived in the county for, this stretch for over 32 years, well over 3 decades. And I've always been interested in helping the community and helping people. I've been a search and rescue, I've been a reserve sheriff, I've been involved in the Parks Department as a board member, I've been involved in other community organizations from NASCAR to Minter Creek watershed areas over the last 27, 30 years. And I'm doing this as basically a taxpayer, a common person's voice, wanting to get a better say for what direction we're going, what things are happening, and try to bring better communications between the commissioners and the taxpayers. And then part of that is getting the staff and the county itself, us all communicating on the same basis. And it's something I've seen so much of over the last 2 or 3 years I've been attending meetings, that I think if we don't do that, we're putting ourselves in an era that the distrust of the voters to what the commissioners are saying, to what the staff is saying, is just going to keep building to the point that it's going to be really difficult to get anything accomplished that's going to be good for the county. And that's what I see is, I want to do good for the county, and I want to have your support and vote.
Thank you, Roger.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time.